In the quiet pre-dawn hours of September 29, 2012, a desperate 911 call shattered the stillness of a suburban Las Vegas neighborhood. Shauna Tiaffay, a decorated firefighter and father, stood in the living room of his estranged wife's townhouse, his voice trembling with panic and grief. "My wife, she's on the floor bloody, stiff, not moving," he told the operator, his words punctuated by sobs. Beside him, his 8-year-old daughter, clutching her father's hand, faced a scene that would haunt her forever. Her mother, Shauna Tiaffay, lay lifeless, her body battered and surrounded by a pool of blood. What began as a suspected burglary spiraled into a chilling saga of deception, greed, and cold-blooded murder, orchestrated by the man Shauna once loved. Join us on the Crime Decoder as we unravel the heartbreaking and sinister story of Shauna Tiaffay's final moments and the shocking truth that tore a family apart. Shauna Tiaffay, 46-year-old cocktail waitress whose radiant smile lit up the bustling floors of the Palms Casino, was last seen alive on surveillance footage clocking out of her shift at 3:01 a.m. on September 29, 2012. After a grueling 10-hour shift navigating the neon-lit chaos of Las Vegas's high-stakes gambling scene, Shauna was drained. Her feet ached from hours in high heels, her arms tired from balancing trays of drinks for wealthy patrons. She climbed into her car, a modest sedan, and drove 30 minutes through the quiet desert night to her townhouse in a peaceful Las Vegas suburb. Parking in her garage, she entered her home through the connecting door, too exhausted to turn on the lights. All she wanted was the comfort of her bed after another long night. But the darkness hid a predator. As Shauna moved down the hallway toward the staircase, a figure emerged from the shadows, gripping a claw hammer. The attacker lunged without warning, and Shauna instinctively threw up her hands to shield her face. The assailant struck with savage force, shattering her fingers as she tried to fend off the blows. The hammer came down again and again, each strike more brutal than the last, until the wooden handle snapped under the ferocity of the attack. Shauna collapsed, her life extinguished in a matter of moments. The wound to her head was so deep that paramedics arriving hours later initially thought she'd been shot. At 9 a.m., Shauna Tiaffay arrived at the townhouse with their daughter, who had spent the night at her grandmother's and wanted to pick up a forgotten toy. The garage door was ajar, a detail that immediately set George on edge, as Shauna was meticulous about locking up. Stepping inside, he called out for her, but the eerie silence was broken only by the sight of Shauna's body in the living room. Blood had pooled around her, her face unrecognizable from the trauma. George's 911 call captured his anguish, but the presence of his young daughter at the scene added a layer of horror to an already devastating moment. For the little girl, the image of her mother's lifeless body would become a permanent scar. Shauna Tiaffay was born on March 12, 1966, in Salt Lake City, Utah, into a devout Mormon family, the second of 7 children, with her sister Paula and 5 brothers. Shauna grew up in a world of faith, community, and strict values. Her childhood was filled with family traditions, Sunday services, potluck dinners, and a sense of togetherness. At age 12, her family relocated to Pennsylvania, then Virginia, where Shauna attended South Lakes High School in Reston. There, she blossomed into a vibrant teenager, known for her infectious laugh and stylish flair. As a cheerleader, she was the heart of school spirit, always at the center of pep rallies, with her bright smile and boundless energy. Classmates described her as a girly girl who loved fashion and could make anyone feel at ease. Graduating in 1984, Shauna seemed destined for a bright future on the East Coast, perhaps in business or the arts. But the call of the West was strong. In 1994, at 28, Shauna moved to Las Vegas to be closer to her sister Paula, who had settled there. The glittering lights of Sin City were a far cry from her Mormon upbringing, but Shauna was drawn to its energy and opportunity. She started in high-end retail, working at prestigious stores like Saks Fifth Avenue and Neiman Marcus, where her charm and eye for style served her well. Yet, her ambitions reached beyond retail. Las Vegas's casino scene, with its promise of glamour and big money, beckoned. By the late 1990s, Shauna landed a job as a cocktail waitress at the Fiesta, a lively casino where she honed her skills navigating crowded floors and charming patrons. When the Palms Casino opened in 2001, Shauna seized the chance to join its team, stepping into a world of luxury and high stakes. Cocktail waitressing was grueling long hours, late nights, and relentless demands, but Shauna thrived. She loved the fast-paced environment, camaraderie with coworkers who became like family, and the thrill of working among Vegas's elite. Her earnings were substantial, nearly $100,000 a year with tips, equivalent to about $170,000 in 2024. On a good night, she could pocket $500, often in casino chips that functioned as currency in Vegas. Her coworkers adored her, recalling her as always bubbly, always laughing. One said Shauna could light up a room. She loved cocktailing. It was her stage. Beyond the money, Shauna relished the lifestyle, spending freely on clothes, vacations, treating friends to dinners, embodying the Vegas spirit of living large. In 2002, Shauna's life took a romantic turn when she met George Tiaffay at the Palms. Born on September 15, 1972, George was 6 years younger, a charismatic firefighter with a rugged all-American appeal. Raised on a chicken ranch in rural Nevada, George had faced hardship early, losing his father as a child. He threw himself into work on the family farm, developing a strong work ethic that carried him through academics, graduating as valedictorian of his high school. He earned a coveted spot at the U.S. Military Academy at West Point, where he studied engineering. After serving in the Army Corps of Engineers, building schools and water systems in developing countries, George returned to civilian life but found desk-bound engineering jobs stifling. Becoming a Las Vegas firefighter gave him purpose, combining physical courage with a desire to serve. His chiseled features and charm landed him in a firefighter pinup calendar, and his reputation as a family man supporting his mother and disabled sister made him a local hero. When Shauna met George, the attraction was electric. Their shared drive and charisma drew them together, and in 2003, they welcomed a daughter, a bright-eyed girl who became the center of their world. On March 16, 2006, 3 days after Shauna's 40th birthday, they married in a dreamy beachside ceremony in Hawaii, surrounded by swaying palms and crashing waves. Photos captured their joy: Shauna in a flowing white dress, George beaming in a linen suit. To the outside world, they were a perfect couple, a glamorous cocktail waitress and a heroic firefighter, building a life together in the city of dreams. But beneath the surface, their marriage was beginning to fracture. The 2008 Great Recession hit Las Vegas like a wrecking ball. As a city reliant on tourism, gambling, and construction, it was among the hardest hit in the U.S. The housing bubble's collapse triggered foreclosures, and unemployment soared to 14%, with some estimates suggesting even higher rates in certain sectors. George and Shauna were not immune. Investments in real estate, a common venture for Vegas residents during the housing boom, crumbled, leaving them with significant financial losses. Their once comfortable lifestyle, marked by vacations, nice cars, and Shauna's penchant for designer clothes, became a source of strain. George grew increasingly controlling, resenting Shauna's spending habits. He criticized her cocktail waitress uniforms, calling them provocative, sometimes in front of their young daughter, who was just beginning to understand the world around her. Shauna, fiercely independent and proud of the money she earned through grueling shifts, pushed back. She saw her income as her own, a reward for her hard work, and George's attempts to control it sparked bitter arguments. Another point of contention was a homeless man George hired for odd jobs around their home, known as Noel Stevens. He was an ex-convict living a transient life. Shauna found his presence unsettling, describing him as creepy and expressing discomfort with his lingering around their property. George dismissed her concerns, insisting he was helping a man in need, but Shauna's unease grew. By April 2012, after a decade together and 6 years of marriage, Shauna reached her breaking point. She moved out of their shared home, renting a modest townhouse nearby to maintain independence while co-parenting their daughter. Their schedules, Shauna's late-night casino shifts, and George's 24-hour firefighter duties made custody challenging. Their daughter often stayed with George's mother, who lived nearby. In a final effort to salvage their marriage, they began counseling in the summer of 2012, meeting with a therapist to address their issues. Shauna, ever the optimist, hoped they could rebuild. Perhaps for their daughter's sake, or because she still believed in the dream of their family. But the sessions couldn't mend the deepening rift. In early September 2012, Shauna's townhouse was burglarized, an incident that shook her sense of safety. The intruders' actions were bizarre and invasive. They used her shower, rifled through her belongings, and stole her wedding ring and a pair of swimsuit bottoms, leaving behind a pair of small boxer shorts. The violation left Shauna rattled, but her optimistic nature led her to downplay the incident. She confided in Paula, saying she believed it was a random act, unlikely to happen again. Against advice, she chose not to install a security system or upgrade her locks, trusting that lightning wouldn't strike twice. Tragically, this decision left her vulnerable. When police arrived at Shauna's townhouse after George's 911 call, the brutality of the scene stunned them. Blood spattered the walls, and Shauna's injuries were catastrophic. Her fingers broken, her skull fractured. The ferocity of the attack suggested personal rage or a deliberate intent to kill. George, as the estranged husband, was the immediate suspect, a standard starting point in domestic homicide cases. He told police he'd been at the fire station on a 24-hour shift during the murder, and his daughter had been with his mother. Colleagues at the station confirmed his alibi, and records showed no gaps in his presence. With George seemingly cleared, the investigation stalled. Shauna's co-workers at the Palms were devastated, describing her as a beloved colleague who brought joy to their grueling shifts. Shauna was like family, one said. She worked hard, laughed hard, and never let the stress get to her. With no other leads, police began to suspect a predator targeting casino workers, a theory that spread fear among Las Vegas's late-night service industry. The September burglary took on new significance. Could it have been a warning sign? Detectives interviewed neighbors and canvassed the area, but no suspects emerged. 2 days later, a breakthrough came from an unexpected source. William Big Will Penks, a maintenance worker at a local apartment complex, contacted police with a chilling tip. Will was a respected figure in his community, known for helping those down on their luck. He had been mentoring a homeless ex-convict named Noel Stevens, alias Greyhound, who lived in a tent in the desert foothills, far from the glitz of the Vegas Strip. In a recent conversation, Noel had confessed to Will that he'd killed a woman with a hammer, describing the act with a disturbing lack of remorse as if it were a task completed for a reward. Will, horrified, pressed for details, but Noel offered little beyond his cold satisfaction. Though skeptical, Will felt compelled to report it. Police tracked Noel down at a gas station near an Albertsons supermarket, where he was known to steal food and occasionally sell drugs. When approached, he had drugs in his possession, giving officers grounds to arrest him. A search of his desert campsite, conducted with helicopters and ground teams scouring miles of rugged terrain, yielded a critical find. A pair of pants rolled up and half buried under a bush, stained with blood. DNA testing confirmed the blood was Shauna's, directly tying Noel to the murder. Interrogation. Noel admitted to hiding in Shauna's home, waiting for her to return from work, and attacking her with a hammer until she was dead. But the question loomed. Why would a homeless man target a cocktail waitress he seemingly didn't know? The answer emerged from Noel's cell phone, which revealed an astonishing 87 calls with George Tiaffay in the past month, far more than a casual acquaintance would warrant. Under pressure, Noel confessed that George, whom he called my friend the firefighter, paid him $600 to kill Shauna with promises of thousands more. Noel was the same man Shauna had found unsettling, hired by George for odd jobs around their home years earlier. The pieces began to fall into place, and Shauna's instincts about Noel's dangerous presence proved tragically prescient. Shauna's sister Paula had suspected George's involvement from the moment she learned of the murder. Hours after Shauna's death, Paula and her husband called George, who was standing outside the crime scene with a grief counselor. In a recorded conversation, Paula's voice trembled with grief and suspicion. "Can you tell me what's going on?" George's responses were vague, and he quickly handed the phone to the counselor. Alone with the counselor, Paula confided, "I have my suspicions that her husband may be involved, based on many conversations with my sister." She was afraid of him. Paula's intuition was bolstered by damning evidence uncovered by investigators. Surveillance footage from a Lowe's store showed George and Noel together weeks before the murder, purchasing a claw hammer, a knife, and a pair of gloves. Noel led police to a desert location where he'd buried the murder weapon, a hammer with a splintered handle, its barcode matching the Lowe's receipt. He revealed that the September burglary was no random act, but a deliberate dry run for the murder, orchestrated by George. Using a key provided by George, Noel had entered Shauna's home nearly 20 times to scout the layout, stealing her wedding ring and swimsuit bottoms to stage a robbery. The boxer shorts left behind were his own, a chilling detail that underscored the premeditation. Most disturbingly, Noelle said the open garage door was a prearranged signal to George that the murder was complete, making George's decision to bring their daughter to the scene all the more sinister. Investigators learned that George and Noelle's connection went back years. Before Noelle became homeless, he had lived with his sister a few doors down from George and Shauna's home. The two men struck up a friendship, and Noelle, who idolized George's charisma and success, began doing odd jobs for the couple. Even after Noelle moved to the desert, George continued to employ him, exploiting Noelle's loyalty and desperation. When George offered money to kill Shauna, Noelle saw it as a way out of his dire circumstances. They discussed multiple plans, staging a car accident, suffocating Shauna with a plastic bag, or attacking her at the Palms, but settled on her home as the least risky location. George's key and detailed instructions ensured Noelle's access and confidence. On October 8, 2012, investigators met with George's family to present the evidence. His sister, horrified but loyal, called to warn him. George dropped his daughter off at his mother's house and fled in his pickup truck, weaving through Las Vegas traffic at breakneck speed. On the Summerlin Parkway, he accelerated to 90 miles per hour and slammed head-on into a concrete barrier. The absence of skid marks suggested a deliberate act, likely a suicide attempt to escape the weight of his guilt. Miraculously, George survived, saved by his seatbelt, and was charged with Shauna's murder from his hospital bed. Noelle Stevens, facing overwhelming evidence, pleaded guilty in 2013 to first-degree murder and related charges. In exchange for testifying against George, prosecutors agreed not to seek the death penalty. Noelle's testimony was pivotal, though complicated by his troubled past. He suffered from a stress-induced stutter and admitted to occasional hallucinations which the defense tried to exploit, yet his account was chillingly detailed. On the stand, he described his relationship with George. "We worked out together, did jobs around his house. He was my friend." When asked who instructed him to kill Shauna, Noelle pointed to George, recounting how Shauna pleaded, "Why are you doing this?" as he struck her. He admitted to the burglary, leaving the boxer shorts to stage a robbery, and confirmed the open garage door as their signal. The plan's intricacy and George's involvement were undeniable. George's defense was feeble. His sister testified to his good character, portraying him as a devoted brother and father who sent money to their mother and cared for their disabled sibling. But this couldn't counter the mountain of evidence: the Lowe's footage, the hammer, the phone records, and Noelle's testimony. On September 3, 2015, after a trial that gripped Las Vegas, George Tiaffay was convicted of first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit murder, and burglary. On December 15, 2015, he was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. In 2017, George filed a 100-page handwritten appeal, a desperate bid to overturn his conviction. He claimed his lawyer had been ineffective, failing to adequately challenge the prosecution's case. He also alleged that medication for a firefighting injury, combined with divine visions, had driven him to believe he needed to protect his daughter by eliminating Shauna. The court rejected the appeal in a scathing response, noting the patience, subterfuge, and perseverance of George's plot. He had maintained a facade of normalcy, working shifts, caring for his daughter, and even attending counseling with Shauna to deflect suspicion while orchestrating her death. The court found no evidence that medication or hallucinations influenced his actions, and his claims of divine instruction were dismissed as self-serving. Investigators pinpointed money as the driving force behind George's actions. The Great Recession had left the couple financially strained, and George resented Shauna's spending habits, which he viewed as reckless. She loved treating friends to dinners, buying designer clothes, and taking vacations, habits George felt exacerbated their losses. Evidence suggested he funneled money through his mother to hide assets, possibly to secure his financial future after Shauna's death. A life insurance policy or control over their shared assets may have further motivated him. By hiring Noelle, a desperate man, willing to kill for a small sum, George sought to eliminate Shauna while maintaining his image as an upstanding firefighter and father. The murder's impact on Shauna and George's daughter was profound. By 2023, she had grown into a young woman, graduating high school under the care of her grandmother, George's mother. The trauma of losing her mother and learning of her father's betrayal cast a long shadow. Shauna's sister Paula and her family grieved the loss of a vibrant woman whose life was cut short by greed and deception. The Las Vegas community, particularly those in the casino industry, mourned Shauna, whose warmth had touched so many lives. The murder of Shauna Tiaffay is a haunting reminder that evil can hide behind the most respectable facades. George Tiaffay, a firefighter hailed as a hero, orchestrated a brutal crime that shattered a family and stunned a city. How could a man who saved lives for a living plot such a heinous act? What drove him to involve his own daughter in the aftermath, bringing her to the crime scene? And how has Shauna's daughter coped with the unimaginable loss of both parents, one to murder, the other to prison? Share your thoughts in the comments below. What do you make of George's failed appeal and his claims of divine visions? Do you think Paula and her family have navigated their grief? If this story gripped you, subscribe to the Crime Decoder for more in-depth true crime stories that peel back the layers of human nature. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss our next episode, and share this video with friends who love a good mystery. Until next time, stay safe, stay curious, and we'll see you soon with another case that demands to be decoded.